Let's speak now to someone who knows a lot about the Catholic community in Gaza, Cardinal Vincent Nicholls, Archbishop of Westminster. Thank you for joining us. What on earth has happened there over the weekend?
Well, as far as I know, and the information comes from, I think, a very reliable source, the Cardinal in Jerusalem, who's the patriarch for that parish. And he said that the compound around the Church of the Holy Family was attacked. Some of its crucial infrastructure was targeted with rockets. And I think most distressing of all, an elderly lady who was leaving the church to go to the toilet was shot dead. And then her daughter, who went out to try and assist her, was killed as well. All of this within what has been clearly designated as a church place, which I cannot believe for 1 minute has rocket launchers in it. And it's a community that since October has sheltered hundreds of people and looked after them. And the religious sisters, the nuns there, have been cooking and feeding people. And the house where they live in that compound, where they look after 54 very handicapped people, the water tanks were blown off, the solar panels were blown off, and the house was rendered almost uninhabitable. So it's a desperate situation for them.
The Pope's called it terrorism. How would you describe it?
Well, it's certainly a cold-blooded killing. That's the description that is given. And what absolutely puzzles me is this does nothing to further Israel's right to defend itself, which I understand. I mean, the last time I was there, and that's a few years ago, it was made very clear to me that Gaza, and this community particularly, lived under the domination of Hamas. So they would have maybe 6 hours electricity a day, and then the rest of it would be switched to the underground network. And that's 4 or 5 years ago, and it won't have weakened. But the killing of evidently vulnerable and innocent people seems to me to set back what Israel says it's trying to achieve.
What explanation could there be?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know about the management of soldiers in uniform and the discipline that they should be exercising. But we've seen in a number of ways that discipline has broken down, and these would appear to be just random shootings. So I hope those responsible for it, because this is a structured army, will be held to account for what they've done.
You wouldn't go as far as how the Pope has described the situation. Incredibly strong language from the Holy Father saying that it was a terrorist attack.
Well, I'm not sure the technicalities, frankly. This is the army of a state. So I would prefer to say it was a cold-blooded killing. And what is so terrible is it's just one example of what would seem to be many, but one example that touches me deeply and one example from which we have some very objective evidence.
The Israeli Defence Force says it didn't happen, wasn't there?
Well, I think that's hard to believe, frankly, because the people in Gaza and the Cardinal Archbishop of Jerusalem, they're not given to tell lies.
So you don't believe the Israeli Defence Force?
No, I don't.
Talk to me about the conditions inside that compound at the moment.
Well, it's hard to imagine, actually. It's quite a limited compound. There are a number of buildings. There's the church, there's the house where the priest lives, the sisters, the hostel that they have, a hall. And it's hard to know. The last reports were that their basic water supply, as it was running with a pump, the pump has been broken. They're resourceful people, but I think they will now be afraid to go outside that compound onto the street. It's just very difficult to know what is going to happen. And that's where, for people of faith, that's where we pray. I mean, it is interesting that the parish is dedicated to the Holy Family, Jesus, Mary and Joseph, precisely because when they were fleeing from the threat of being killed, they walked those same streets. So they went to Egypt and they went through Gaza. That was the route. So all those people in Gaza who are fleeing more than once they're actually in the same footsteps as that Holy Family.
What can be done to help those that are basically trapped in this compound?
Well, I think they, and I suspect it's repeated in many other places, must look to the political leadership. And I would wish to give full support to David Cameron's appeal yesterday for what he called a structured ceasefire. A ceasefire that has a structure to it. There's some movement from both sides, and the objectives are very clear. And they are to bring humanitarian aid in and, very rightly, try and free hostages. What seems to be quite clear is that the only time hostages have been freed was when there was the last ceasefire. And this military action does not look as if it's going to free any hostages.
There's so much